Are you eating in a calorie deficit for weight loss or fat loss or body recomposition, but are struggling to hit your protein target? If that's you, then today's video is for you. As someone who's lost over 40 pounds naturally in my 30s and kept it off for the last 4 years, I know how difficult it can be to navigate a protein goal while being in a calorie deficit, which of course is important to weight loss. So, in today's video, I want to share with you why it's important to make sure that you're hitting your protein goals while you're staying in your calorie deficit, as well as my top tips for how to simplify and help you to get to that protein goal that you have each day. Why is protein so important? Why are people always hollering protein, protein, protein at you in these videos that you watch? Yes, myself included. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. The reason that protein is so important is for a couple of reasons. One of them being that it helps to preserve the muscle mass that you already have. And if you are in a calorie deficit and you are trying to lose weight, the only way to guarantee that you're targeting fat as opposed to muscle is if you're continuing to add protein to your meals to help you rebuild the muscle. Otherwise, when you lose weight, you could be losing muscle and fat at the same time, or even just losing muscle. And we don't want our muscle to deteriorate as we're trying to lose weight and be in a calorie deficit. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you're getting an adequate amount of protein while you're in a weight loss journey, is because you don't want to lose muscle that you already have. It also supports the growth of the muscle, especially if you're doing some strength training, which I'm one of the things I always recommend. If you're doing strength training while you are trying to lose weight, this is going to help support that muscle growth and muscle building while you're in the gym, because your muscles are growing not when you're working them out. They're tearing them down while you're working out, but when you are resting, that is the time that you're building those muscles. And when they're repairing themselves, your muscles need enough protein to rebuild and repair so that you can actually grow and tone out or lean up, or whatever it is that you want to call it, or verbiage it. The other reason is because protein keeps you full for longer. It helps to satisfy your appetite. It takes longer for your body to digest protein. And so, because of that, it's one of the great ways to keep you full for longer, especially when you're in a calorie deficit. Hey friends, if you're finding this video useful or helpful, would you do me a huge favor and give it a thumbs up? It lets YouTube know this is useful and helpful. Thank you so much if you took the time to do that. So, how do you decide what your protein goal should be? Every person is going to be different depending on their weight and their goals and all of those things. But as a general rule, I always say, like, everybody, I feel like for the most part, could benefit from around 100 grams of protein. But if you're wanting to be clear and specific, most of the experts seem to suggest that zero point 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, which honestly is redundant, is what you're kind of wanting to shoot for. So let's say if you have an idea that your sort of ideal body weight is around 120 pounds, then your goal for protein is going to be 120 grams of protein. And those are sort of the numbers you want to be shooting for as you're looking at these protein targets. For me right now, I am rounding it at a little over 100 pounds. I'm at like 112 to 15 right now. I tend to shoot anywhere between 100 and 120, depending on the day and also what my goals are at that time. So you have to decide your protein target first and what's going to best serve you in terms of meeting your goals, as we've talked about before. Then what you're going to do is you're going to decide how often do you want to eat, because there's no one specific diet you need to follow. There's no one specific thing that you need to do to make sure that you're hitting your protein targets. It really is all about deciding how many times a day do you want to eat and spreading out your protein goals throughout the day to make sure that you're hitting that smaller target at each meal. A, because it makes it feel less overwhelming, but B, because you want to make sure that you're getting adequate protein throughout your day. So for example, if you've decided that 120 grams is your protein target for the day, you want to decide, am I a person who wants to eat frequent smaller meals? Am I somebody who wants to eat 5 or 6 times a day? Or am I somebody who prefers to eat less often and have larger meals? And everybody's going to be different based on their schedules and based on how they like to eat. I remember when I first started doing this, I thought I was the person who wanted to eat more frequently. I thought I was the person that would like eating frequent small meals throughout the day. But I have found over years and time that I actually don't prefer that at all. Frequent small meals just makes me, I'm never full when I leave the kitchen. And so I'm always thinking about food, and that really messed with the food noise in my head. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. But do you want a whole video on food noise? Let me know. So for me, the thing that worked best is having larger meals. So I do three large meals and 1 to 2 small snacks, usually higher protein snacks throughout my day to help me get to my goal. And that I feel like feels much more reasonable instead of looking at, oh wow, I have to get 150 grams of protein a day, or I have to get 120 grams of protein a day. So if you're thinking about per meal, and then that gives you an idea of how to sort of plan your meals. I'm not telling you you have to write out specifically your meal plan, but especially if you are in a calorie deficit, you really want to consider and look at what your plans are for getting to your protein in a day. The thing that's worked best for me has been to track it in like MyFitnessPal. Which sort of tracking do you guys prefer? Do you like a MyFitnessPal? Do you have one that you like better? I'd love to know in the comment section. And I like to backfill because often I find that one of my bigger meals of the day is going to be my dinner. And so I don't want to get to dinner and have not met my protein target and be stuck in a situation where I have to try to get like 80 grams of protein at dinner. That's not going to work. It's just not going to be functional. And so if I set myself up to look at my protein source first for each meal and backfill the calories based on that, I have much more success. And also, when you are eating these meals, eat your protein source first and then eat the rest of your food. So if you're having, like, let's say a chicken and rice and veggie meal, eat your protein source first, eat the chicken first, and then eat the other food items so that you're getting full as you're close to cleaning your plate. So number 2 is you want to think about having more than one protein source per meal and combining protein sources. We do this in our house. One of our favorite meals right now is a recipe my sister-in-law found on TikTok, which is a protein taco pasta. It's absolutely delicious, and it combines a protein pasta and lean ground beef and quite a few other ingredients, but it's just like a cook on the stove. It's a pretty simple meal. This is something we eat a lot, and it is a really great source of high protein and keeps us full for a long time. I'll also do things like combining Greek yogurt with some protein powder in the morning if I want to up the protein in my Greek yogurt. You can get higher protein Greek yogurts, but the one I prefer is 80 to 90 calories, and it's just my preferred Greek yogurt. It is one of the lower cal options, and I just like to add a little bit of protein powder. Sometimes it'll be vanilla, sometimes it'll be peanut butter. It really just depends on what I'm vibing on at the moment. And then for lunch lately, I've been enjoying a cottage cheese bowl and turkey pepperoni. So my two primary protein sources in that have been the turkey pepperoni and of course the cottage cheese. Again, both higher protein sources. So combining your protein sources in a meal can be a really helpful way to make sure that you're getting to your protein target. And then number 3, you want to think about getting those lower calorie, higher protein sources. And you want to think about things like this could be a substitute from 3 whole eggs to 1 whole egg and, 2 eggs via egg white. So you're eliminating some of the fat from the egg yolk, still getting a little bit of those healthy fats, but you're prioritizing the protein on that meal and giving yourself more protein. Or it's that 93% lean ground beef like we talked about. That is one of my, top recommendations, is making sure that you're getting higher quality leaner beef so you're getting more protein per volume. You also may want to consider choosing low or no fat options. A great way to decide if something is a high protein source is using the 10-100 rule. So basically what that means is 10 grams of protein per 100 calories. So if something is intended to be a high protein source, if it's 200 calories, then you would want it to have 20 grams of protein. And you can look on the label itself. Some things are better than others. Just because something is labeled as high protein does not make it high protein, unfortunately. So that means as consumers, we have to read the labels a bit more carefully to figure out what is a correct high protein source, not just what they slapped a label on. So you want to be thinking about, how do I get as close to that 10-100 as possible? And especially if you're in fat loss, which I'm assuming you are if you're watching this video, then you want to do your very best to get as many of those protein sources from that 10-100 as possible and not try to skimp too much on that. You don't want those lower protein sources. You want to maximize those protein sources with the 10-100 rule to the best of your abilities. Number 4, supplement protein shakes as necessary. For me, I like a good protein shake. I like the Fairlife shakes. I also really like Ghost. Ghost is probably one of my favorite brands of protein powder. I'm not affiliated with either one. I just really like them. But I think that that's been one of the things that's kept me most like on pace to reach my protein goals, is just to make sure that I have a protein shake every single day, especially after my workout, because I'm usually hungrier after my workouts. So I'll drink a protein shake, and that's a great option, especially if you're drinking and using the cleaner like protein shakes or protein bars or whatever. You kind of want to be careful with protein bars because some of them just have better ingredients than others. So you just kind of want to be mindful of the labels. But there's nothing wrong with supplementing protein, especially if you're trying to hit certain protein goals. It's a nice way to just sort of get the most bang for your buck. By drinking a protein shake. I wouldn't make that your primary source of protein. Everything doesn't need protein in it. There are plenty of natural food sources without you feeling like you need to always be eating or drinking some sort of protein meal or shake. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're pairing those high protein sources with higher volume water based foods like blueberries in the morning with your Greek yogurt and protein powder. Or it might be the protein pasta instead of the regular pasta. Or it might be having more vegetables like salads and greens and then cucumbers or strawberries, watermelon, those types of foods that have high water content, combining those with your high protein sources to just give you a more full and well balanced meal overall so that you're staying full and satisfied without feeling like you need to run to the kitchen every 5 minutes. So I hope this video has served as useful and helpful for you in these tips and tools. And if you love it, please subscribe. Until next time, bye friends.